I don't really get too much deep into the Australian political. I can't speak to too much of what you're talking about, but I have thought a lot about our culture and society as a whole, like human beings, and I really believe that we're doing it wrong. We're doing it really, really wrong, and a lot of it's too hard to undo. You know, the amount of people in the world, the fact that we live in secluded little office units, and we work in office cubicles and stuff. We're supposed to be community driven, tribal people, and we're fucking it all up. But agriculture fucked it for us by letting us grow so quickly and so fast, and now we're you can't undo it. So we're in a real tricky situation. But I mean, necessity is the mother of invention. So fingers crossed. We're pretty. There's a lot of ingenuity going around in the human race. So hopefully we can, right in the nick of time, figure our way around it, and then hopefully continue to move forward as a culture and society and figure it out. Because when I'm pretty happy-go-lucky and pretty positive normally, but when I'm stressed or having a down period or whatever, I think way too deeply on the state of everything. And the state of everything when I'm in that mood is it's fucking not very good.
I should say at this point that, look, I can get like that. And I think as you get older, you get more reflective and you've got a greater time span to compare eras. So it's easier to fall into that trap. Look, there's plenty about life I enjoy, and I
don't doubt it.
Plenty about
Myself
Australia,
too.
about Australia that I appreciate the good fortune. I mean, that's another issue about people who sort of say keep everyone else out. Well, you've had the good fortune to be born here. You didn't sort of inherit living here by right. So I appreciate my luck in that extent. To that extent. I do love my sport. I love my music, so I do don't get me wrong here, I do get plenty of pleasure out of life, but I think that these are important considerations that I wish more people would pay some attention to. That's all.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong. I'm in between all this. It's January now. I still spend way too much time, I did it again the other night, flicking the channels, looking for the cricket, and I go past Fox Footy and, there's the 84 grand final again. I must have watched the last quarter of the 84 grand final 500 times. I actually literally know every bit of play in the last quarter of that game. Stuff like that. So I'll disappear down a YouTube rabbit hole watching old South Australian grand finals, stuff like that. So I am quite obsessive. But, the point I'm making here is there's still plenty of stuff I enjoy.
Oh, no, for sure. And I don't think anyone that will be listening really thinks that we're pessimistic, negative. It's just...
I get that on Twitter a lot.
Well,
we haven't really talked about Twitter, and Twitter is a double-edged sword for me. But I do get a lot of that, you're so negative,
Yeah, well, look, you can look at it a number of ways. You can look at it as negative, or you can look at it as people that are having a conversation that needs to be had, we're just... the subtitle or subheading of this podcast is Brolosophy, philosophy through the eyes of an idiot. But the other subheading is telling interesting and important stories. And I was just, to be honest, this conversation I was interested in your history of making a life out of the passion that you have in football. So narrow and so whatever. And I was really keen to tell that story. We haven't really touched much on it, but I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. But telling interesting, important stories, there has to be someone doing that so that others can understand what's going on. So I think all we're doing here is we're talking about things that are going on in the world. Yeah. We're not creating these problems. These are issues that really are happening, and we're just raising the point and talking about them, because if nobody does, then nobody does.
Well, don't get me wrong here. I don't want to sound like I'm, sort of full of my own self-importance, but when you get a decent-sized Twitter following, it sort of is possible to put something out there and have people at least think about it. And what's interesting with this is, I always said when I started on Twitter, it's not just going to be footy. I love music. I am interested in the world, blah, blah, blah. And for a long time, and I've made a joke of it, people who disagree with you or whatever, they'll tweet, stick to sport. So these days, as soon as I get one, I retweet it and I just write, ding, ding, there's number one for the day and whatever. Funnily enough, over the last month or so, when my tweeting's been almost exclusively about politics, people have started to say, when I tweet something about the Big Bash game I'm watching or whatever, they go, stick to politics, So it's sort of swung around a bit.
Funny.
But look, I would say, and this applies to anyone in the sports media like myself, I mean, sport is an escape, and I
Yeah.
understand why people who are right into sport, they don't want to hear about stuff that gets them down and isn't sort of in their wheelhouse or whatever. But I think maybe people who follow sport are people who can most be helped by someone bringing this sort of stuff to their attention.
Mm-hmm.
And again, don't get me wrong, it's not that calculated on my part. I see something that interests me or makes me angry or whatever, I tweet something. There's no great thought process goes into it. But I think it's quite possible to be passionate about sport, and I am, and be passionate about the world around you. The two things aren't mutually exclusive, you know.
That's right. You're Rohan Connolly, not Rohan Connolly sport.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like you're a human being.
Yeah, and I think that as I've got older, in the last few years, that has become more important to me. And I do get shirty when people assume that because you're a sports journo, you don't know anything about anything else. Now, having said all that, we haven't really talked about
we haven't
the
at all.
footy, have
and
we?
we have no time to. So that's totally fine.
There you go.
No, it's all interesting stuff. All that stuff really interests me, and I as soon as you mentioned before the show, there was some other stuff you thought would be interesting to talk to. I thought that this might happen because it's, to me, with all due respect, it is more important and interesting than sport. You know,
Yeah, well,
although like I wanted to hear your story and so on and so forth. But it's I get fired up by that kind of stuff. And again, you kind of said, I think something along these lines, but I really know fuck all about anything. You know, I want to preface that to anyone that's listening to what I say.
I can tell in our brief dealing that's not, you're selling yourself short there.
Yeah, but, you know, this is it. But as I said, it's philosophy through the eyes of an idiot, you know?